Hey folks, welcome to Hobbyshire. I hope this video finds you well. My name is Chris and today I want to show you how I make my best washes. These are my homemade washes. I wanted to share the recipe with you because I realised during my last video that I'll probably be using these washes in many of my videos, and I wanted to be able to direct anybody who was interested to a place where you could see, learn and make them for yourself. Before we begin, I want to point out that there are many videos out there that make washes, and the majority of them are absolutely valid and very similar to mine. I do make mine a tad different to most, but that's just because I have my own process and it suits my way of doing things a little better. I call them my best washes simply because out of all the ways I have made and played around with washes in the past, these are the best ones for me. Anywho, let's make a cup of tea and get started. So first things first, let's go through everything we will need. We need bottles. Now I've known some people to save jam and marmalade, even coffee jars and stuff like that. That's absolutely fine if that's what you want to do. Just keep in mind that if you can't seal whatever container you are going to use properly, then bacteria is likely going to build up in your wash. I like these bottles, they are 100ml. I like that size, I've gotten used to the portions for that size, so they're perfect for me. I bought them from Amazon for £10 for 10 bottles, which is an absolute bargain in my opinion. Your bottles can have any type of lid that you want. I just personally prefer the dropper lid so that I can squeeze out however much wash I need without having to unscrew a cap and then try and pour accurately into the pallet, because as you will see in this video, I'm a messy worker and the dropper lids just make it easier for me to fill the little tiny bowls in the pallets and stuff like that. You also need ink, preferably artist quality ink. You can use paint if you want, acrylic paint or even oil paint, but that's a total different recipe. There have been times where I've whipped up quick washes using nothing more than some acrylic paint and a lot of water to heavily dilute it. That works in a pinch for sure, but this recipe I'm going to teach you is my best recipe. Like I mentioned earlier, I've made many washes, many different ways, and in my opinion, this is the best of them all. So keep that in mind, this is my specific best recipe. From now on, I won't mention cheaper or more basic alternatives in the video as I focus on this particular recipe, but I'll add some text at the bottom of the video every once in a while to give you other options. For me, the primary ink you want is a black, a brown, burnt umber is the best brown in my opinion, and a green, olive green is the best green in my opinion. I also like to have a blue ink, but I'm out of that, so I'm going to try this blue. I'm not sure how it will work though, as I think it might already be watered down. I've no idea. I bought this a long time ago just to glaze the wings of a miniature that I was painting and never used it again, so I can't even remember how it goes on, but I'm pretty sure it is already diluted down, so this might not work, but I wanted to make it anyway just to show you, and I can't be bothered to go to the store to buy more ink. But yeah, preferably get a proper artist blue ink. And that's pretty much the only 4 colours I ever use for my washes. I mix and match all the time, which you'll see later on. Liquitex Matte Medium. This is a vital ingredient for my wash. I did once try another brand of matte medium before. I can't remember if it was Winsor & Newton or some unknown brand. I'm not sure, it was a long time ago, but when I used it, I found that it changed the colour of my washes and made them a little cloudy after they dried. After that happened, I went back to Liquitex and I've never looked back. I'm sure there are plenty of other brands of matte medium out there you can use, be my guest, but I can't form any opinion on them because I always make sure I get this particular brand for my own purposes. Liquitex Flow Aid. Again, I'm sure there are other brands of Flow Aid out there just as good, but I can't speak for them as I only get this specific brand. Lastly, we need water, good old H2O. Well, kind of. I use deionized water. You can use mineral water, filtered water, spring water, whatever you like, even tap water. I just don't, because sometimes tap water can be pretty bad quality and I don't want to risk bacteria getting in my washes and making them funky. So deionized water is something I get from Asda, which is a big superstore. It's usually down the car accessories aisle. For me, it's right next to the car shampoos and screen washes and stuff like that. It's dirt cheap, £1 or £2 for a big bottle. Now for the recipe itself. Get your bottles, however many you will need. I'm going to make 3 today. I want to mention that my most common washes are straight black, straight brown and straight green. I'm not going to make those today because I still have plenty of those left, but the recipe and process is exactly the same. So if you want to just make straight colours, just follow along and just tweak the recipe to whatever colour you want. Today, I personally want to make a black-brown wash, a camo shade wash and a midnight wash. First thing to do is pour in your matte medium. I want to show you here the different volumes of matte medium that I tend to put in. This first one is my most common amount. I take the bottle and fill it almost halfway. All my straight black, brown and green washes have this amount in. It's the optimal amount and the amount you for the most part should be using according to the instructions on pretty much every bottle of matte medium I have seen. They always say around 50-50 with your water, so I stick to that. But I wanted to show you this middle one because there are times when I'm running out of matte medium, so I put this amount in to ration it out. And though I do have another unopened bottle of medium today, I wanted to show you that it doesn't make that much of a difference to use a little less. I also want to show you this one on the right, which is a lot less than half a bottle. This means I'll be adding a lot more water in order to fill the bottle, which will make a little bit of a difference in terms of dilution. Next, go ahead, top it up with your water. Don't completely fill the bottle because remember you need room for the ink. This is usually good enough for me. Then comes the flow aid, which as you might tell by the name, helps with the flow of your wash. I put anywhere between 6 to 12 drops in the bottle because these are 100ml bottles and pretty big, and I generally never need more than that. At this point, I like to put the lids on and give them all a good shake. Now comes the ink. I like to add around 6 or 7 full droppers to these bottles. That measurement works for me because these are 100ml bottles and these droppers in the ink are short and stubby. So the ratio will obviously change if any of those aspects do, like if you use smaller or bigger bottles, if you have inks with longer or shorter droppers, it's experimental. For me, this works. It is a good point for me to explain that I use my washes a little different, like I mentioned before. To me, my washes are ingredients, not finished mixes. I like to make them a lot stronger than they need to be, like a raw ingredient. Then when it comes time to use them, I can mix them up in the palette and add water depending on what I need and how thin I need it. For example, if I make this already super thinned down to a thin wash, and then I'm working on a project one day and I find there comes a time where I need or want a stronger wash, it will be a bit of a nuisance trying to make this wash stronger. Whereas making it weaker is as easy as just adding more water on my palette when I pour it out to use. I can then keep it as strong as I like or thin it down as much as I like with very little effort and without having to mess around with multiple layers that consume time. So that's the main reason I make them really strong and undiluted, so to speak. Most of the recipes you will see online, they use a lot less ink because they're making them ready-made, already fully diluted, and I just don't like to do that. I'll show you later what they look like when I don't dilute them in the palette, and they are a bit too strong for use at this point for most things, so if you want them ready to use right out the bottle without having to dilute them on the palette, just add less ink, that's all. But for me, after much experimenting, it's the best for me to make them this strong. So, like I said, 6 or 7 droppers is usually enough. If this was my straight black wash, I'd just squeeze in that amount of droppers worth of black ink, and that's it, you're done. But I want to give this one a little hint of a brown tone to it, so I'm going to add 3 black and 3 brown. I like this mix, it works for me, but if you want to find your own tone, just experiment. When I first started making washes, I would do this. I would put in the inks, then I would shake it up, mix it together, and then I'd paint it on something. And if I decided that it needed a bit more brown, I'd add more brown, and then I'd paint it on something again until I had the ratio I preferred. But 50-50, 3 droppers of each is the tone that I like. For a camo shade, you want to mix green and brown together. I use this blend mostly for algae stains or washing over moss and stuff like that, but again, just find the shade you like and experiment until you're happy with the tone, because at the end of the day, That's what homemade washes are, experiments with the freedom to tweak and refine your strength, tone and shade until you perfect it in regards to what you are personally happy with. It's your wash, it's for you. So no one can tell you what ratios of inks to use, because what I love in my tone, you might hate, and you might want a completely different shade. So it's all down to you, that aspect. This is just, I'm just showing you what I do so you can see what mine turn out like. But you will find, most probably, no matter who you follow online and whose washes you copy, you will always tend to tweak it to suit your needs better. Then give them all a good shake, and don't forget to put the lids on first. It sounds obvious, but I'm a goof, and once completely brain farted, forgot to put a lid on, then started to shake it and got a face full of it. Then I sat there, face covered in snot wash, whilst everybody around me pointed and laughed. So don't be like me, remember the lids. Once mixed, you can further see if your tones are how you want them. I have decided I wanted to tweak the camo shade and the black and brown wash, as it's not quite right for me. I can see that the blue is fine for my purpose, so I'm ready for that next step too. For me, the black and brown muddy wash gets more brown and the camo shade gets more green. I didn't realise at the time of recording that I pulled the bottles out of camera shot. Sorry about that, but yes, all I did was add brown to the first bottle and green to the second. With the blue, now that I know that the colour did mix fine, I add some black, about 3 droppers worth. And that's it, the washes are done, as simple as that. These are my 6 tones. I never use any more than this. To be honest, I mostly stick to my main 3, the black, the brown and the green. They're strong, like I mentioned, so I can mix them together on the palette and water them down to whatever strength I want. I like to put the brown wash in my palette first usually, and then add the black, and then I start varying more and more water as I work around the project, using it to add grime and dirt to pieces. Same with the black, sometimes I water it down a lot just to glaze and true wash over things. Sometimes I keep it really strong to nullify colours and just leave hints of tone change. A good example of this is my last video. In that, almost everything got these 3 used on it. For the stone, the algae, the moss, the bricks, the muddy corners. I was able to make up every wash I needed just by mixing those 3 colours together on the fly in my palette as my creativity saw fit. I'll show you how these go on, because I did say I'd show them undiluted so that you can see how strong they are. And I also wanted to show you the midnight wash because that's pretty much diluted already. Before making this video, I had been painting some miniatures for an upcoming Warhammer battle that I've got planned, so I just grabbed some scraps of foam and used up whatever paints I still had left on my palette. I literally just whacked them on with a dried up brush just to show you the washes going over them. First, we will try the black wash. This is completely undiluted. If I was putting this one on a miniature, it would always get diluted on the palette like I keep mentioning. However, there are times I will use it like this, completely undiluted, straight out the bottle, mostly when I'm painting stone. You'll see what I mean when it's dried. It's going on nicely, and as suspected, because it is undiluted, it's going on very strong and covering over the majority of those colours. If I wanted to keep those colours, I would, as I say, add water to it. Next, the pure green. I also want to show you that you can use a sponge to put it on instead of a brush. This one I usually mix with a brown to paint algae and stains on brick, but sometimes I do use it neat like this as an underwash for stone if it's a very dank, moist kind of stone, like a humid cave or something, or sewers. Again, you'll see when it's dry. Then the brown wash, I never use this without mixing it with the black or the green and diluting. It usually goes really good when mixed with the green. Then the brown/black wash, good for dirt and grime on stuff. It adds a weathered look to many things. This one I always tend to dilute when using. Then the camo shade, I mix up how much I dilute this depending on how thick I want the areas of algae build up to be. And then finally the midnight wash. I use this like a black wash, but when I want to add a tint of blue to the black. This one is diluted, as you remember from the beginning of the video. We didn't have as much medium, so we added a lot more water, and I hope you can see the difference there. To further demonstrate how the washes go on when diluted, I've made one more, and this is the black wash once I've diluted it on my palette, and as you can see, it goes on perfectly as a nice overcoat. So perhaps you now can really see what options are open to you when initially making your washes super strong rather than already diluted fully in the bottle. Trust the process, folks, it works. Let's wait for this to dry and I'll show you the finished result. Usually when I do washes, I'm adding a overbrush or dry brush or anything, something like that. The wash is usually never the final stage, and as you can see now, once these are dried and I'm adding this dry brush on, it really does work. We've got the really dark black washes now looking like nice weathered stone kissed by sunlight. You've got the green wash looking like sewers and sewer walls and moss covered walls, again kissed by a bit of light, and it just all looks really nice. You can see the diluted ones look really good. They might not show it well on camera, but the midnight wash looks like a really nice black wash with a blue hint of shade to it. It's just really works well, guys, and this is all I ever do. I never make any other washes than these ones, and I hope this video has helped you to know how I make my washes, so that if you ever do follow along in my videos, you can come to this one, copy my wash recipe, and yeah, that's all. So for now, guys, thanks for watching, and toodaloo.